9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the channel or are watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it is called Uncommon Sense because here on this platform we discuss everyday issues where we try to find logical solutions, but not everyone uses logic. So for that reason, it is called Uncommon Sense. I also have a much smaller YouTube channel called Latina Diaspora, where I discuss issues pertaining to Latinos in the United States. The link to that channel is in the description. I want to let everybody know that I'm currently live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and the subscriber mode has been enabled. Meaning, if you are not a subscriber and if you wish to enter a comment in the chat, you will need to subscribe to the channel. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all those who've already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been a supporter from the very beginning or just recently joined, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter into your devices and those who watch from the clouds, even the haters. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have not done so already, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and set the bell notifications to all. So, therefore, whenever I do create content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch it on the playback. So, as you can see by the thumbnail, the topic for tonight is how to create a successful channel. So I'm going to give you what I perceive as some secrets, some things you need to do in order to be successful creating content, regardless of the platform that you choose to utilize. But before we get into the main topic, we're going to have another episode of In My Words. Um, the first thing I'm going to talk about is my friend Irby Fatal finally created his own YouTube channel, and he actually did a brief live earlier this morning. Unfortunately, I believe it's been privated. But basically, about what appears to be like a test stream, so to speak. Um, but I'm glad to see that he's creating content. He also has created some shorts. So I'm going to ask that you show some love for him, subscribe to this channel, and share his content. I will be sharing this content as well. Of course, every new YouTube content creator, there's always a struggle to get recognition because it takes a while before the algorithm picks things up. But the key is to remain consistent. Okay. which is to produce content on a regular basis. Now, I will be discussing further what do I mean by that. Let's see. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is, of course, things continue to be quiet here in these two streets, as far as no beeps are coming down this side. Of course, we always know that things can heat up all of a sudden. Okay. Today I had an interesting day of work. Of course, I was very busy. Of course, I'm not, due to the nature of my position, I'm not going to air um, what transpired because I do deal with confidential information. However, I am looking forward to the Sunday, which is the Dominican Day Parade. Okay, it's a day for all Dominicans to show their pride in their culture, their country, and everything that makes everything wonderful with the Dominican community. Now, the previous Sunday, they had the Bronx Dominican Day Parade. Unfortunately, at into the parade, there was some gunplay and people got hurt. It is very unfortunate, okay, that things like that happen because it could leave a sour taste in people's minds and hearts, and also can give the wrong impression regarding Dominicans. Okay, Dominicans as a whole, they are hardworking people. They're family oriented, hugely proud of their culture, hugely proud of their country, and all the things that the Dominican Republic has produced. Okay. I have had the blessing of visit the Dominican Republic twice, and I have been treated very well by the people over there. Of course, the key is to be courteous, to be respectful, and to be mindful of the fact that things are done differently in the Dominican Republic. It's um, and one thing that some of us make the mistake when we go to a different country is we expect things to be the same thing as in the United States. We fail to understand that we are in their home, in essence, their country, and that we need to be mindful of that. We need to be respectful of their cultures. We need to be respectful of the people over there. Okay. And by all means, do not try to create a beef over there. Okay. Because one thing about Dominicans, they are deeply proud of their history and they do tend to stick together. So what happened is if you in error try to pick a fight with Dominican, you're gonna be dealing with a whole bunch of them. Okay. That's the nature of things. And I think it's the same thing whether in Puerto Rico as well. Um, One thing I will recommend if you do plan to visit the Dominican Republic, uh, try to learn about the culture and the customs and what are the social mores over there. Um, Also, it doesn't hurt you to at least know some Spanish, particularly if you're not going to stay within the tourist areas like Santo Domingo, Santiago, things like that nature. But if you're going to go travel outside, um, a reasonable command of Spanish is going to help you to go very far. Okay. And by all means, do your best to blend in because let me tell you something. Um, they can spot a foreigner very easily, particularly a foreigner that does not have a good command of the Spanish language. Okay. And of course, excuse me, always be mindful of your surroundings. So, as a general, excuse me, as a general rule, um, before you visit a country, spend some time doing some research, knowing what are the social mores over there, and of course, be mindful that it's a beautiful country. Okay, there are people that are gonna do whatever to survive. Okay, it is not as economic advantage as the United States, but you can visit the country as long as you're mindful of how things are done over there and have a reasonable command of Spanish. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna get into the name. Now, excuse me. Now, before I continue, let me state for the record that the link to join the panel has been pinned. Should anyone wishes to hit that link and opine regarding the topic in hand, they can do so. However, if I never seen you before, if I never heard from you before, I will insist that you come up in the backstage and make sure that you're not going to try to flash anything inappropriate, particularly when it comes to genitalia, because if that happens, the people you two will most likely take down the stream. Okay. Now, once I see that you are not going to violate my guidelines and just be a productive member, um, I will allow you on the panel. Of course, whether you wish to cam up or not cam up, that I leave to your discretion. Okay. And unfortunately, I do have to state that disclaimer every time because there are certain people that will try to disrupt a stream for whatever reason. Okay. But in any case, and of course, most likely most people are going to watch this on the playback, being that there are other content creators are currently doing live as we speak. But so be it. The show must go on. Now, for those of you who are thinking about um, launching your own platform, your own channel, particularly if you're going to be on YouTube or Instagram or what have you, before you start creating content, you need to think about what type of channel you're going to be. You need to think about what's going to be your content. Okay. Mind you, there are literally hundreds of thousands of content creators here on YouTube. Okay. So it could be a challenge um, as far as trying to create a niche, so to speak. My suggestion is to create a niche regarding something that you'd like to talk about, that you feel comfortable with, that you have some knowledge about. Okay? That's something I had to do when I started creating content on my own. Okay. So I decided that the focus of this channel would be discussing everyday issues because, to my knowledge, there have not been too many content creators that dealt with everyday issues. And of course, you have to give yourself um, a name of your channel, something that people going to. It should be something that people are going to remember, which is why I chose the name Uncommon Sense. And the reason why I call it Uncommon Sense because basically the whole premise is that people should use logic. Unfortunately, we're living in a day and age when people don't operate logically. People function by emotion. People go by their own feelings and things of that nature. And we all see what was the consequences when people act on emotion. So I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to name myself Uncommon Sense. And then I added my government name. Uh, you can choose to use your government name, or you can choose to use yourself any name that you wish. Like, for example, Ramon goes under the title The Introvert Boricua. My friend Rakim goes under the channel name of The 18th Blood. So once you're giving yourself a name, you're giving yourself and you have um, arrived at what's going to be the nature of your content, then of course you start slowly but surely you create content. Okay, and of course every content creator have their own set of rules. Okay, how they're going to govern their channel. Okay, one thing to bear in mind: when it's your channel, you decide what goes on. You decide what's going to be permitted, and you decide what's not going to be permitted. Okay. So it will help that you have some principles to function by. Okay. Now, in general, what I don't have many rules. Okay. The only rules that exist are that everybody's opinions matter, that we should be mutually respectable for everyone's point. Also, everyone should have an opportunity to express themselves as they see fit, as long as mutual respect is shown. Okay. Now, the question that always comes up: should you camera or not camera? That's totally up to you. Okay. Now, in the beginning, when I started doing my content, I did camera. In other words, I put on my camera and people would see my charming face. In time, I decided to use use an avatar, which in my case is a picture of yours truly. Okay. Now, what I did was I took a look at another content creator and how she functions. Okay. And of course, I'm referring to Latin explaining with Denise Gonzalez. Okay. I've seen how she conducts herself. Okay. She were have it, have a topic, do research, talk about it. Okay. And then Um, Many times she would open the panel to anyone to join. Okay. Now, among the first things that I have learned from her is to have a disclaimer. Okay. Of course, you're all familiar with the disclaimer. Okay. Now let me explain to you the reason for the disclaimer. Okay. This is just because here everyone is allowed to express their point of view. And sometimes they're going to have different views where I don't share. I don't have a problem with that. As long as there is mutual respect being shown. Okay? Now, there are certain kinds. Like, for example, no one is allowed to manipulate, okay, and control the flow of the stream. It is my cyber home. It is my channel. I dictate what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Okay. Now, as a content creator, you will need to develop some rules and principles. Okay. Okay. And you also need to develop what are some consequences for those who do not abide by your rules and guidelines. Okay. Now, generally, what I would do, unless they're being totally outrageous, I would let them know, I'll give them a warning, stating that their conduct is inappropriate and that they risk being removed from the channel or being um, placed in the backstage. Okay. If they continue to not abide by my guidelines, then they will be removed. Okay. Now, there's been times where I have had to um, ban people from the platform. Okay. I don't like to do it, but it is necessary. And generally, individuals that get banned, it is because of the fact that on multiple occasions they choose not to abide by my rules and guidelines. And I'm happy to say, not too many individuals have been banned. Okay, some have. I am not going to mention who are those individuals are. Those that have been following this platform for any length of time know who they are. I and another reason why I'm not going to mention them is that I don't want to give them any shine. Now, another thing that's very important when you are creating content is consistency. And what I mean by that you should be producing content on a regular basis, whether it be once a week, twice a week, whether it be multiple times each week, what have you. Because the reason is the following. If you do not create content on a regular basis, it makes it hard for your viewers um, to consume your content. It also makes it hard for the algorithm to pick up. Okay, so what I would suggest that you have a habit of creating content on a regular basis. If you can, try to stick to a schedule. Now, for the most part, have a schedule where when it comes to this channel, I produce lives 3 times a week. I also create what I call short videos virtually every day. Usually they don't last long. Usually they're about anywhere from 15 seconds to a whole minute. The shorts that I usually create are meant to be funny or meant to be motivation. Okay, because I do have a sense of humor. Okay. Now, you can, if you wish, create live streams, uh, or you can do videos, or you can do both. That's totally the beauty part. Is that's totally up to you how to do it. Okay. And of course, there's some things I had to learn in order to be a successful content creator. First of all, there's a thing called creating thumbnails. Okay. Now I will admit, uh, my thumbnails are very, very basic. Okay. There are those that can make wonderful thumbnails. Okay. Now, what I try to do is I try to keep it attractive. I also try to keep the channel under the titles um, as short as possible because people, I'm not going to remember a string that's with a title that's like it takes you more than a minute to read. Now, in time, you might decide um, to use what I call moderators. And what are moderators? Their function is to assist you, particularly when it comes to the chat. Okay. What they do is they monitor what's going on to the chat. Okay. They make sure that the people in the chat are behaving themselves, they're being appropriate. Okay. One thing you will have to deal with as a content creator, you're going to deal with people that are trolls, which basically what they do is I mean, the serious, the pain in the neck trolls, the inappropriate trolls, they will try to disrupt your channel. What they will try to do is try to elicit an emotional response. Now, it's been my philosophy that when it comes to my ops, um, not to say anything because I cannot control what other people say or do. I control how people respond. Okay, and that's reality. Doesn't need to say. Good evening. Good evening, Don Armando. Thank you very much for stopping by. And yes, please hit the like button as you enter. Okay. And of course, my friend Don Amando, he has his YouTube channel. So I'm going to ask that you show some love to him and check out his content and subscribe. Okay. So the topic of tonight is how to create a successful channel. So I've been sharing some tips and some things that will help you to create a successful channel. Now, moderators, what they can do, if there's anyone in the chat that's typing anything inappropriate, what they can do is they can warn the person. They can also remove the comments in the chat. They can put the person on timeout, or they can block them completely. I'm sorry, I just have to do a little self-advertising. Okay, so as I stated, the moderators they serve a very useful purpose. Okay, they help them make sure that things are peaceful with the chat. Okay. And of course, basically, when it comes to my mods, they more or less have the freedom to act. And generally, as long as people are going to misbehave, they have the freedom to act appropriate, which will mean either put it on timeout or block them. Okay. And of course, you'll have to be familiar, particularly when it comes to StreamYard, because with StreamYard, there's a lot of things you can do. You can highlight comments. You can share content. In fact, let me just put some music. Okay, just give me a moment. No. Okay. So you can also create some background music. So there's a lot of things you can do. Okay. Now, one thing one thing I would suggest as a content creator, take a neutral stand when it comes to what's happening as much as possible. Okay, because one thing you got to find out as a content creator, that there's always going to be people that will be beefing for whatever reason. It could be something about what someone said. It could be something that someone did. It could be maybe they're beefing because they're friends with someone that they don't like. Okay. Now, if they want to go at it on their own channel and railed against that person, by all means, not to. But when it comes to your platform, believe me, you're better off not to allow people to bring their beefs to your channel, because what it does, it makes it messy, and the next thing you know it, you get into a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be, that does not concern you. Now that's something that I learned the hard way, and I'm going to give you a case of point. Several months ago, there was a beef between two content creators, and one of them decided to include me in their beef or whatever. So I decided to give my response, and basically in the form of constructive criticism directed towards the person. Lo and behold, that person had a complete meltdown and developed multiple streams about yours truly. So I've learned the hard way. When people have beefs, do not get involved. Okay. Also, to the extent possible, do not make any mention regarding people who is your opposition, or as I like to call it, ops. Okay. What happened is it gets very messy, and it goes back and forth. You say something, and they say something, and you're going to respond to that person, and it doesn't end well. Okay. And I have personally seen in my 4 years, people go back and forth because people felt the need to respond to everything that's been said. Which brings me to a very important point. Whenever you create content, or whatever you say on any social media, people are going to respond. And people may try to create controversy regarding a content. Now, there's certain things you should never air on any platform. For one thing, do not share any personal information about yourself. Okay. Do not share highly confidential information. Because one thing, once it enters the internet, it does not leave. Even if you delete it, people could have saved an image, recorded, or they could have saved screenshots, and then that does make paint their own narrative. So you need to be mindful of what you're going to say or do. Another thing that you need to be mindful for are the community guidelines on the platform that you're on. Because every platform, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Instagram, whether it be X, whether it be Rumble, have their own community guidelines. And they have a list of things that you should not do. Okay. So I would suggest that you devote some time learning what are the community guidelines. Now I get it that it seems like some people get away with certain things that they should not do. But one thing to be mindful of, even though the enforcement may not always be constant, it is there. Now, generally, there's certain things you should not do. One of them is no hate speech directed of any group, whether it be men, women, ethnic groups, religious groups, or the LGBTQ community. Okay. Because as much as you might disagree with the LGBTQ community or any other community, they have a right to live their life as they see fit. As long as they don't impose their views and their values on others. Okay. Another thing that you should not do is share violent content. In other words, people being physically assaulted or anything of sexual nature, or where children are exploited. Now, there's a whole set of guidelines. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time, but I would humbly suggest that you devote some time to see what are the community guidelines on the platform that you're going to create your content. So therefore, by doing it that way, you do not violate. Because the consequences is this. You can have your content deleted, or if you do it multiple times, you can have your channel deleted. Okay. I believe I did a stream some point regarding community guidelines and what other consequences. I may do that again sometime in the fall, just as a refresher. So you develop your name, you develop what's going to be content about, and then you set out to create your content. One thing is very important. Do not use another person's content without their specific permission. The reason why, because if you use another person's content without their permission, the person or persons who created the content can report you to the platform, and you can receive a strike, which is basically a violation of guidelines. Because you cannot use other people's content without your permission. Now, there's a thing called free use or free. But the problem is what can be interpreted, there's always a myth that if you share like only a certain number of seconds and under free use, it's okay. As a general rule, do not use another person's content and if you do not have their permission. Because all you're doing is you're just creating problems. Okay. And for the benefit of those who are just watching now, the topic for tonight is how to create successful. Now, another thing you have to bear in mind that you will be devoting time and energy on the content. Okay. So I would suggest that you could look, that you start slowly, maybe, produce content maybe once a week or twice a week, what have you. Okay. And of course, you can always ask questions. And believe it or not, there are multiple videos here on YouTube to help people how to create content. And then in time, you learn to do certain things. Like, for example, I have learned to pin the link to the chat, link to join the panel in the chat. It makes things a whole lot easier. And there's a reason why. By me doing it, I don't have to keep dropping the link. Okay. Also, be mindful of your thumbnails. That your thumbnails should reflect what is your topic. And by all means, do not use other people's images without their permission as your thumbnail. No. You're just asking for trouble. Now, one thing you will see is that you have content creators who are forever mindful when people use their content without their permission. Because yes, they will report the violation to the people of the platform. And of course, there's other things, try to create different topics. Okay. Of course, by all means, do your due diligence, do some research regarding whatever topic you're going to discuss, which is very important, okay? Because when you speak on a topic, it is assumed that you have some knowledge. The one thing you don't want to do is to speak on a topic where you have absolutely Now, what might help you, particularly in the beginning, create some notes regarding certain things that you want to discuss. Okay. At least in the beginning, why you're doing that is that it helps you to remain focused regarding your topic. And you're not just you're not just talking random. Now, in time, you will learn to be able to speak so basically without notes. But remind me, in the beginning, do have some notes. Okay. And of course, the first time, you're going to have butterflies because you're going to be concerned about what you say, what you do, whether people are going to like the content. Okay. My suggestion, be yourself. Okay. Do not try to be another Jose Negron. Do not try to be another Denise Gonzalez. Do not try to be another David Patel. Just be yourself. Okay. And in time, as you create content, people will be checking out your channel. People will subscribe to your channel. And sometimes people are going to add the comments. A lot of the times the comments are very positive, a lot of times it's very neutral, and a couple of times the comments are going to be kind of nasty. I would suggest that if people choose to leave nasty comments, delete it. Okay? And one thing you have to bear in mind, not everyone is going to love your content. You're going to have people that are going to support your content, and they're going to share your content, and they're going to leave positive comments, and you're playing with the same notion. You're going to have people who are going to write nasty comments. That is just the reality of their content career. And it also helps that you have a thick skin. And what do I mean by that? If people paint a false narrative about you, or they say things about you which are not true, my advice, to the extent that you're able, ignore them. Just realize that not everyone is going to enjoy it. And truth be told, you can't be everything to everybody. Okay? And from time to time, depending on the nature of the content, you may want to have a disclaimer. Like, for example, when I discuss topics regarding Christian topics, I put up a disclaimer is that I am not attempting to try to force anyone to embrace Christianity or embrace my Christianity. Or I ask that those of you to please be open-minded and consider the topic of content. Now, I know that our content creators that treat their platforms like an echo chamber. In other words, they only allow people to say things that they like. My suggestion is allow people to think for themselves and express themselves as long as they're mutually respectful. Because one of the most difficult things to do is to be agreeable when we disagree. But I think you're going to find out that by doing it that way, it makes life a lot easier. And also, you might expose yourself to different things that you never thought about. And of course, every now and then, people are going to try to tell you how to run your channel. Bear this in mind. You and you alone dictate how things are done in your channel. You and you alone determine what is acceptable or not acceptable. You and you alone determine what are the consequences of those who violate your guidelines. And be not afraid to remove people from the panel, remove people from the chat, or ban them from your platform. Okay. Remember, you cannot control what other people say. You control what is your response. Now, I have been talking for almost an hour regarding the topic. Should anyone wishes to hit the link and opine regarding the topic at hand, they can do so. Of course, you're more than welcome to comment further. I'm not going to hear that long due to the fact that not many people are watching this stream. Okay. But I did wanted to address the topic regarding how to create a successful channel. Which leads me to my final point. You're going to have weeks where you're going to have a lot of people who would view your content live. And there's going to be a lot of activity in the chat. And there's going to be nights, it's going to be days, where it's going to be very quiet. Do not let that bother you. Just remain focused on producing content on a regular basis. Because it seems things that could go in cycles. There are weeks where people are really viewing your content live or on the playback. And then there are weeks when there's very low activity. Do not be discouraged. Okay. And one thing to bear in mind, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Okay. And again, you need to be thick. If you're not going to be thick-skinned, you have no business creating content. And be mindful. You cannot control what other people say or do. You control what is your response. And with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. I will be live Friday, same time, 10:30, where I'm going to have another episode of open discussion. Now, what do I discuss? For those of you who are not familiar, that's the day of the week where I will share my views regarding multiple topics. And of course, those in the chat will have an opportunity to opine. Also, if they have anything that they wish for me to discuss, I will do my best to complete. If there's something where I do not have a great deal of knowledge, I will be transparent and sincere. Of course, the playback end, do your own thing. You're more than welcome to leave any comments. If you have anything nasty, it will be deleted. So hopefully I gave you some things to think about, to consider if you think about creating content. And of course, I'm going to close the same way that I always close. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of mentally and intellectually challenged, because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by the stupidity and massive insanity. This has been another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Saying good night. Good evening, April. I'm just getting ready to wrap up. The topic for tonight was how to create a successful channel. So what I did was I just did some principles to follow. Okay. Just to capitalize out what's going to be the nature of your content. You should put it on a regular basis. Also, you determine what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And also you develop what are the consequences for those that continue to violate your principles. Everything else, just watch everything in the playback. And this is all based on my own personal experiences as a content creator for 4 years. And before I forget, I'm asked that you show some love to April Showers. She produces great content. So I'm asked that you please check out her content and consider subscribing. And with that being said, I'm going to close the same way that I always close. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged, because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by the stupidity and massive insanity. This has been another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Saying good night, take care, be blessed, and